Hey guys, welcome to week 8 of our Science and God study, The Big Bang Theory, Part 2. Today we're going to be covering a recap of week 7, The Big Bang Theory, Part 1. You guys are going to have to bear with me today because there's going to be a lot of information that we're going over very quickly. Some parts it might go over our heads, so we're going to just try to follow along the best way we possibly can. We're going to look at the best place to start anything. We're going to look at physics in the beginning of the Big Bang Theory. We're going to look at how the Big Bang Theory comes up with lots of band-aids for the bullet wounds that they have. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that expression, band-aids for bullet wounds. We're going to look at how it really requires blind faith to believe the Big Bang Theory. We're going to look at a problem in depth with a lot of quotes called the fine-tuned problem. We're going to look at a bunch of quotes tonight. You guys are going to be shocked, and some of them are quite hilarious. And we're going to close talking about multiverses. And then in closing, we'll just go over a recap of what we covered this week and look at what we're going to cover next week. You guys are going to have to bear with me. As we said, the Big Bang Theory is a very complex concept with multiple parts. It's not a simple model. It's not a simple theory. It's extremely detailed, and it's extremely complex. So this week I had, up to this point I haven't dealt with this dilemma, but I had to take the challenge, I had the difficult challenge of taking hours upon hours of research and study and trying to break it down into a 25-ish minute study. And that really, with how complex and how big the Big Bang Theory is, it really was not an easy thing to do. I had to leave out a lot of material, a lot of facts, and a lot of quotes that I wanted to include, but for the sake of time, I just couldn't. Because you guys have been very patient this far in this study. We've taken a lot of weeks to just set up where we are now, and so I don't want to drag it out any longer than I have to, so I did leave out a lot of information. I did try to take the main points and present them in a way that we could understand without having to get into every single detail that would turn this study into a year-long process if we did look at every little detail and every little claim. I will not be able to explain all the complex details ad nauseum for the sake of time and the fact that I have limited knowledge. For this reason, there are going to be times when you just have to try to follow along. So I'm not going to be able to explain everything. There are going to be some terms that I might not be able to take the time to explain in detail. So when that time comes, just please try to follow along. But this is also why I really urge you guys, I strongly suggest that you do research on your own if you want more information. So where's the best place to start anything? Of course, it's the beginning. We should start with the beginning with any question that we have. So the Big Bang Theory states that in the beginning there was nothing. There was literally nothing. More specifically speaking, there was no time and there was no space. There was no time and space. There was literally nothing at all. So there was no matter, no atoms, no particles, no passing of time, no events, no radiation. There was nothing at all in the beginning. This is and remains the most prominent issue with the Big Bang Theory. So clearly nothing can make nothing. Something cannot come from nothing. Nothing cannot make or do anything. Nothing can't make anything, let alone everything. Nothing leads to nothing. So if you have nothing, then you're still going to have nothing, even if it's 14 billion years later or whatever. If you have nothing, then that will never turn into anything. So it's easy to say that obviously nothing can't turn into something or everything. That's an easy thing to say, but let's get more scientific than just simply stating that obviously it's an issue that everything supposedly came from nothing. Let's get more scientific than that. This claim in particular of the Big Bang Theory, it violates, it defies science, the very area that it supposedly is proven by. They say, oh, science proves that the Big Bang happens. We look at physics, we look at different areas of science, and it proves the Big Bang happens. What we find out very quickly is that that's very much not the case. So according to the Big Bang Theory, time and space came after the Big Bang. And subsequently, the scientific laws that we know today came after the Big Bang. Again, before the Big Bang happened, there was no time, there was no space, there was no passing of time, and there was nothing at all. The Big Bang Theory tries to use physics to explain what happened in the Big Bang and how the Big Bang occurred in the first place. But it states that physics didn't exist until after the Big Bang occurred. So there was nothing there for physics and the laws of physics to act on. So physics didn't exist until after the Big Bang came to be, so you can't use physics to explain why the Big Bang happened or how it happened. Stephen Hawking, I'm sure you guys have heard of him before, he's probably the world's most famous cosmologist, said, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. So Stephen Hawking said that since we know that there are laws such as gravity, the universe can and it will create itself from nothing. But this is a clear contradiction, as gravity doesn't even exist until after the Big Bang occurs according to the Big Bang. They claim that everything came from nothing defies physics. More specifically, it defies the law of conservation of energy. The law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be converted. The Big Bang Theory defies basic laws of physics, so how can they say that physics supports the Big Bang Theory? The Big Bang Theory also defies the law of thermodynamics, which states that it requires energy is required to do work. But at the beginning, before the Big Bang, there's no available energy in order for nothing to use to create everything. There's nothing there. There were no sources of energy in which nothing could actually do work, which does make sense. Nothing obviously can't do work either. But there's no energy there for nothing to use to create everything. So it defies those two very basic laws of physics from the get-go. So Band-Aids for bullet wounds. Basically, if you guys aren't familiar with the phrase, it's basically saying, you know, if you've got a bullet wound, you can't just slap a Band-Aid on it and then say that everything's going to be fine. A bullet wound is a much bigger problem than a simple Band-Aid can handle. But as we said last week, many problems arise and exist for the Big Bang Theory. These problems are typically handled in two ways. We'll look at it later. For now, let's just move on and look at other things, and we won't worry about that. We'll have an answer for that later on. We'll come across it probably at some point. But more often, it's handled this way. We have to come up with a whole separate explanation for this problem. So when they do come across the problem, they kind of pause and they go and they have to construct this other complex explanation to solve this one problem. And that's why last week I showed you guys the image of, it's kind of like you take one of those infant toys where you got to match the shape, and you know, we know that the star or the shape that would fit that one hole is God. We know that God created the universe. We have scripture that tells us that and how he did it. But we have the Big Bang proponents who construct this big SUV to try to fit in this one hole when we already have the answer. So they're constantly having to add to the Big Bang Theory, constantly having to take away from it, constantly having to mold it into this big complex structure that's never going to fit into this God-shaped hole that we have when we look at the question of where the universe and where we came from. So the Big Bang Theory has come up with many Band-Aids for their flaws and problems. So many kind of quick, convenient fixes using mathematical equations. So again, I did say you guys are going to have to bear with me. I'm not going to be able to get into a tremendous amount of detail, and now is kind of the area of the series, of the study, where you guys are going to have to just kind of bear with me and just try to follow along. So the flatness problem. So the geometry of the universe, according to the Big Bang model, it should be either a sphere or it should be largely curved, as we see in the top two images of our picture in the upper right-hand corner of this slide. So this is a problem, because what we found to be true, which was shocking to everybody, is that the geometry of the universe is actually completely flat, such as the bottom image in the picture in the right-hand corner. So this was a problem for the Big Bang model, because it predicted that it would either be a sphere or it would be largely curved. So in response to this problem, inflation was the explanation. So inflation was a theory constructed by theoretical physicist and cosmologist Alan Guth. In this inflation, the theory stated that the universe was inflating shortly after the Big Bang due to particles called inflatons. Problem is, inflatons don't exist. But they must exist, otherwise we have three problems that remain for Big Bang cosmologists if inflatons don't exist. Therefore they must, because if they don't exist, then we have problems. and we need a fix, and this explanation fixes that so we can move on, so we're just going to believe this. It requires a lot of faith to believe in something that's never been observed, something that's never been seen, and something that there is no proof for, other than a convenient fact that it fixes a problem, right? This requires faith for a belief system, naturalism, that supposedly doesn't require any faith because they only have proof. So inflatons don't exist. Rotation curves. So I've got an image on the upper right-hand corner. So the velocity of stars can be measured, how fast they're moving. But the measurements don't line up with Big Bang prediction. So Big Bang predicts that the stars on the outside of these rotation curves of galaxies, that the stars on the outside will actually be moving faster than the stars on the inside. However, we've recently discovered that the stars on the outside are actually moving slower than the stars on the inside. And this doesn't line up with what the Big Bang model predicts would happen. So their explanation is that there must be a large mass ring of dark matter on the outside that is causing the outside stars to move slower than the inside stars. Again, the problem is dark matter doesn't exist. We can't see it even with our best telescopes or with our best technology. It's never been seen, it's not observable, and there is no proof for it other than the fact that it fixes their problem for them. But it must exist in order to solve the problem that they have, otherwise the problem is still there. Again, this requires faith. It's never been seen. There's no proof for it other than it solves their problem. So they're looking for a quick fix to solve this problem. And now they found another one called dark matter. Another problem is acceleration. So apparently there was unpredicted acceleration of the expansion of the universe seen in the Big Bang model. So the universe started expanding at a more rapid rate, which we call acceleration, than the Big Bang model predicted. It didn't see it coming. So this poses a problem because they've, again, predicted something that never happened or didn't pan out the way that it should have according to their model. So their explanation for this is dark energy. That there's dark energy and it acts as anti-gravity, which caused the universe to be able to expand at an accelerated rate. Except the problem is that dark energy doesn't exist. It's not observable. It's never been seen. There's no proof for it other than the fact that, again, it solves their problem, so it must exist. So the fine-tuned problem. We're going to talk a lot more about this one later on in this study. But for now, so the universe appears extremely unlikely and unsuitable for human life. It's extremely hostile against human life or against life at all. However, here we are. We exist on this planet that's floating in space next to a giant ball of burning gas called the sun. And we happen to live, the Earth happens to be positioned in a perfect position for us to not be so close to the sun that we get incinerated and we all die, and not far enough away from the sun where we would freeze to death. Our universe, our planet, our environment, our atmosphere happens to be able to have all of the different extremely unlikely things that allow for us to survive. This causes a huge problem for Big Bang proponents because they suggest that the universe is completely random, and if it's completely random, then it can't be this fine-tuned, and it can't be this perfectly set up for us to survive, because what that suggests is that there is a God, there is an intelligent designer who made this universe and this planet the way that it is so that we could survive on it. So their answer, and there's a lot more to this answer, it solves a lot of other problems. What multiverses are just other universes that we've never seen before, but it's predicted that there's up to an infinite number of universes with different laws of physics and different details about the way the universe works and the different laws that are at stake. And the idea here is that when there's an infinite number of universes that are even slightly different, then eventually even the most unlikely events are going to occur. Unlikely events such as the fact that we're positioned here where we can survive. So that's the logic behind multiverses. There are supposedly infinite number of universes identical to this one in different details. So blind faith. So the state of the universe according to secular cosmology looks like this. So this would be a graph. 4% is normal matter. Normal matter meaning things that we observe, things that we know exist, like planets, stars, and galaxies. We know that these exist. 23% of it is dark matter, which again we've never seen. There's no proof for it except that it solves problems. And 73% is dark energy. again, dark energy is unknown to us. We don't know what it is. We just know that apparently it has to exist, otherwise we have problems that we're left with. And so what we see is that 96% of the universe, according to the Big Bang model, is matter and energy that we've never seen before, that doesn't even exist, that just solves some problems. And that's really, really sad that according to the Big Bang model, we only know 4% of what is in the universe, and the rest of it's just completely invisible to us, and there's no evidence for it. So here's a quote. "It's an embarrassment that the dominant forms of matter in the universe are hypothetical." Hypothetical meaning not real. It's an embarrassment that the dominant forms of matter in the universe aren't real. They don't exist. Creationists, Christians, we're accused with having blind faith, believing that God created everything without any proof or no evidence just because the Bible says so. Meanwhile, naturalists, they rely on science and they rely on data, and they don't need faith. They don't need to, have any superstitious beliefs because all the evidence is there and science backs it up. Is this true? When 96% of what they believe exists isn't even real and it's never even been seen? You tell me who has blind faith. As you can see, they blindly believe whatever the leading cosmologists tell them, regardless of proof. And it gets even more strange than this, as we're going to see when we look at multiverses. That's pretty much as weird as it's getting so far. So looking more at the fine-tuned problem. The fact that we're able to survive because our atmosphere and place in the universe is perfectly set up for it is a huge problem for secular cosmologists. So now I've got a million quotes to share with you. All of these are from Spike Saris's video that I mentioned earlier. And so are the graphics that I shared with you earlier. Most of my research and studying was done on that video, which I watched like a million times. Because he just covers the information so well and he knows what he's talking about and he's been in the field. There is now broad agreement among physicists and cosmologists that the universe is in several respects fine-tuned for life. Fine-tuned meaning that every detail is in place for us to be able to survive. The existence of vital substances such as carbon and the properties of objects such as stable, long-lived stars like the sun. It is fine-tuned for the essential building blocks and environments that life requires. You couldn't have life without our universe being as fine-tuned as it is. Our universe appears surprisingly fine-tuned for life, in the sense that if you tweaked many of our constants of nature just by a tiny amount, life as we know it would be impossible. Some of the fine-tuning appears extreme enough to be quite embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we have faith that we're going to wake up tomorrow if the universe came by complete random chance, and if it's still completely unpredictable because of how fragile it is and how fine-tuned it is. The more I examine the universe and details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe, in some sense, must have known we were coming. Really, the universe knew we were coming, huh? That makes perfect sense. So, before I go on with any more quotes, so these quotes are from reputable, intelligent, secular, for the most part. I think there's one or two quotes from people, from Christians or creationists. Most of these quotes are from intelligent, reputable, well-respected, well-educated, secular cosmologists. So these aren't just random quotes that you find on the internet. They're not Joe Schmo sitting in his basement who had an opinion and put it out there on the internet. These are from reputable publications and organizations from around the globe who are cosmologists. So these are well-educated people. Most of the fundamental constants appearing in our theories appear fine-tuned. If they were altered by only modest amounts, the universe would be qualitatively different, in many cases unsuitable for the development of life. Some super-calculating intellect must have designed the properties of the carbon atom. A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The universe, as it turns out, is a very unlikely place for us to be. It's been compared to the difficulty of taking a sharpened pencil and balancing it on its tip for 14 billion years all by itself. And this is a quote from Spike Saris that he said in the video. And I love that quote, so I included that as well. So some responses that some secular cosmologists have had to the fine-tuned problem. When considering that we appear to be at the center of an expanding universe, because we actually are which would be a favored position if we were at the center of an expanding universe. And this is where we're going to reveal the heart of some of the early Big Bang proponents. So, Edwin Hubble, the inventor of the Hubble telescope, a forefather of astronomy, said this hypothesis cannot be disproved, but it is unwelcome and would be accepted only as a last resort. Therefore, we disregard this possibility and consider the alternative. The unwelcome supposition of a favored location must be avoided at all costs. A favored position, of course, is intolerable. So those are some pretty strong words that let you into his philosophical ideology. So having a favored position in the universe suggests design. More specifically, it suggests that there is a God, a divine being, who created it to be that way. And in response to this idea that there's an intelligent being who designed the universe that we could survive it in, so that we have this favored location, is intolerable to Edwin Hubble. It must be avoided at all costs. And it would only be accepted as a last resort. A cataclysm for physicists, and the only way that we know how to make sense of it is through the reviled and despised anthropic principle. The anthropic principle is the idea that the universe was designed to be inhabitable for us. In a quote from the secular cosmologists, he uses strong wording. It's the idea that the universe was designed to be inhabitable for us is reviled and despised. So some more responses to the fine-tuned problem. It is proposed that our universe was created by life of superior intelligence, existing in another physical universe. Intelligent being, perhaps our own descendants in the far future, might possess not only the knowledge to design, but also the technology to build universes. This forms the basis of a theory of natural selection of universes. Intelligent life in a parent universe creates offspring universes, and in the offspring universes, fit for habitation, new life evolves to a high level of intelligence and creates further universes. So the idea that our descendants in the far future might be able to make and build universes that would then build further universes is what this person, this article, this reputable cosmologist is proposing. And here's my response. Are you kidding me? They will really look for any possibility but God. They admit that it looks like the universe was created by life of superior intelligence. They admit that. But they wouldn't dare say, might be God, might be some divine authority. They say, oh, it's possibly our ancestors in the far future who created us, and we are going to then grow more intelligent and create other universes. This is just garbage. They will consider anything but God. So, going back to multiverse, which we've already talked about. So, in trying to solve all of the various problems with the Big Bang model that it has, and in facing that the universe is an extremely unlikely place for life to survive, modern cosmology has dug into new theories to try to relieve these problems. The theory that there are multiple universes, or multiverses, excuse the typo there. So, the likelihood of the universe playing out the way that it is in a way that we're able to exist as we are today has been calculated to be 1 out of 10 to the 120th power. And what that means is that it is 1 out of 10 with 120 zeros behind it. previous to that, it was calculated that it was 1 to the 60th power, which means there's a likelihood of 1 out of 10 with 60 zeros afterwards, which was the same as having a 1-inch target on the opposite end of the universe 20 million light years away. I think it was 20 million light years away, and taking just a pistol, taking a gun, and shooting it and perfectly hitting that target on the other side of the universe 20 million light years away. There was the same likelihood that we would have the universe in the condition that it's in today, so that we would be able to inhabit it and survive. That quote is also in the video by Spike Psars. So it's proposed that there are possibly an infinite number of universes identical to this one where different laws of physics apply. And there is said to be people identical to us somewhere in another universe where other details are different, like maybe the South won the Civil War. Again, this is Spike Psars speaking. And where, I don't know, maybe there were different presidents. Maybe somebody else won the election. There's small details. And there's one article that Spike references that says, you know, there might be somebody else in the universe who's doing the exact same thing you're doing right now. They're reading this maybe an article that you're reading, and they put it down 10 seconds before you did, and then that changed the course of their history. But basically, they're you. So there is a you, supposedly, maybe even an infinite number of you, living in other universes somewhere, and that's just crazy. So here's a quote that I like because it's pretty straightforward. If there is only one universe, you might have to have a fine-tuner, because of how unlikely it is that we are able to survive it. If you don't want God, you'd better have a multiverse. And this is basically the choice we are faced with. Believe the Big Bang model, which eventually comes to the point where they believe in multiple universes, or accept the fact that there's a God who designed this universe so that we could survive in such a hostile universe. So, in closing, again, I want to just remind you guys that the video that Spike has is so much better, and my information was taken from it. Please look it up. It goes over much more detail, everything that I covered. So we covered a lot today. It was a lot of information, a lot of just stuff being thrown at you. We looked at how the Big Bang Theory defies the laws of physics from the get-go. We saw that the Big Bang Theory comes up with lots of lofty explanations for their problems, like the inflaton particle, dark matter, dark energy, all of which do not exist, but they supposedly do in order to solve problems. We recognize how the Big Bang Theory really requires a lot, not just a lot of faith, but a lot of blind faith. We looked at how fine-tuned the universe is and how that poses a huge problem for secular cosmologists. We looked at so many quotes, and I again had to leave out so many good quotes. The quotes that I left out can be seen in that video. We looked at the direction that the Big Bang is headed in. And I really wish I didn't word it this way. It's not the direction that the Big Bang is headed in, it's where the Big Bang is now. That they propose that there are multiverses. There's an infinite number of multiverses. Next week we're gonna simmer down a little bit. We're gonna take another look at kind of what we covered today. We're not going to go over it all again, but we're going to say, okay, now what do we do with all this information? How does this benefit us? How can we use it? And why is this important? So we kind of set up our apologetics study saying that the purpose is to break down barriers that people have to accepting that there is a God, and ultimately to accepting that they are in need of Jesus Christ to cover their sins, to spread the gospel. So we're going to say, how do we take this? How do we go from all of this information to the gospel? It's basically what we're going to be doing. Why is this relevant to our lives today as believers in Christ, who have the responsibility of representing the truth to people when there are so many lies out there? Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I mean, honestly, I would rather you go and watch Spike's video more than I would like you to watch this study today, because the same information he covered is so much better and so much more detail, and it's just better content overall. But thank you guys very much for taking the time. God bless you. Use this. I hope this was encouraging to you to see that, hey, we're not wrong. The Big Bang is not true, it's not accurate, it's not real. We can stand firmly on the Word of God, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you again on Sunday as we continue our study on the Big Bang and how to properly apply